the issue as surrounded by, quote, a lot of fake news. Some former government officials have said he and his mother Imelda, as co-administrators of the Marcos estate, could be criminally liable for refusing to pay dues. Records from the Supreme Court show, as obtained from a reliable source, the decision on Marcos family's estate tax case reached finality on March 9, 1999. Marcos Jr.'s political party agrees the court ruling on his family's estate tax worth 23 billion pesos is final and executory, but not the surcharges over the past years.
Parang sinasabi na yata yung 23 billion naging 203 billion na. So nadagdagan po ng 180 billion. Karamihan po niyan penalties at saka surcharges. Siguro we are familiar na pagka na-late lang tayo sa income tax natin, ang laki-laki na po mahigit 50% yata ang penalties and surcharges. So what I am saying that is the figure of 203 billion is not final. Yan po ang hindi final sapagkat subject po yan sa reconciliation.
The party believes the Marcos estate tax has become more controversial now that the presidential candidate has maintained his lead in pre-election surveys. CNN Philippines continues to reach out to the BIR for comment on the issue. We also previously requested for a copy of related documents from Commissioner Cesar Dulay on the matter, but we have yet to get a response. There are 40 more days before the Filipino votes, and there is no stopping party list groups under the Makabayan bloc from joining the May 9th race. This despite President Duterte ranting against them. The Commission on Elections says these groups have long been accredited. Our Melissa Lopez has the details.
President Duterte wages another public word war against Congress's Makabayan bloc composed of his critics. He wonders why they are allowed to run and win congressional seats.
Sabihin ko sa inyo na tama si Lorraine Badoy na itong mga party list na Kabataan, Anak Pawis, Bayan Muna, Alyansa of Concerned Teachers or ACT at Gabriela. Ang problema, they are supporting or they are really parang legal fronts ng Communist Party of the Philippines.
The groups have been labeled as terrorists and sued by the National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict or NTF-LCAC. The Makabayan bloc has pushed back with its own set of criminal charges before the courts. Bayan Muna Representative Carlos Zarate says it's a wrong accusation that puts the lives of their members at risk, worsened by the Anti-Terrorism Act.
Bayan Muna is a legitimate party. It's registered with the COMELEC. Certainly, ang Communist Party of the Philippines is a legal party, no? And they erased the distinction between armed and unarmed, no? Kami ay mga unarmed activists, no? Hindi kami mga rebelde. Pero gusto nilang burahin yan.
Zarate says Bayan Muna has been in Congress for 20 years, adding the issue is a political tactic.
Talagang ang target nito is mag-sow ng intrigue, buwagin, no? Magkaroon ng lamat dito sa growing support sa candidacy ni Vice President-elect.
Despite Mr. Duterte's accusations against progressive lawmakers, the Commission on Elections says they remain in the running.
As far as the COMELEC is concerned, until and unless may mag-file ng formal petition to disaccredit, to cancel the accreditation of a party list, siyempre naprint na po yung mga pangalan nila sa balota.
Garcia says that period to object already lapsed. 177 groups, including those part of Makabayan bloc, are vying for at least one seat in Batasang Pambansa on May 9th. Melissa Lopez, CNN Philippines.
Senator Manny Pacquiao reveals his running mate Leto Atienza told him to support fellow vice presidential bet Tito Soto if the Buhay Party list representative can no longer push through with his campaign. Atienza is still recovering from his knee replacement surgery last month and has been unable to join Pacquiao on the campaign trail. CNN Philippines has yet to get Atienza's side. Manila Mayor Isko Moreno vowing to assert the country's sovereignty of the West Philippine Sea and even said he would accompany fishermen there if needed.
Basta tayo, we will insist on the hake. And we will fish in our water. That includes Panama. I need to be with the fisher folks, and if Zelensky can do it, we can do it also. No, not jet ski. Hindi ako ng jet ski. I'm going to be there and don't want to overpromise things. Mas tayo, we'll be there. We'll protect our fisher.
One of President Duterte's campaign promises in 2016 was to ride a jet ski and plant a Philippine flag on the Spratly Islands, only to admit 5 years later that it was a joke. Vice President Leni Robredo's running mate Kiko Pangilinan calls on their supporters in the city of Maasin, southern Leyte, to reject other vice presidential candidates being paired with her. VP candidate Sara Duterte is confident her running mate Bongbong Marcos will carry Mindanao in the coming elections. She says surveys show Marcos's rating in Mindanao is at 70 to 80%, despite groups in the region pushing her with either Robredo or Moreno.
We will try our best to deliver for Bongbong Marcos in Davao region, and based on our surveys, he is doing well, and we can do more for him here.
Marcos is on a 5-day campaign blitz in Mindanao. He lost in the Davao region during the 2016 VP race, but got twice the votes of Robredo there. Election and security officials are going around the country to make candidates and their supporters commit to an orderly, honest, and peaceful election. The national government wants to leave no stone unturned in its preparations, especially in areas vulnerable to election violence. David Santos reports.
As security forces remain optimistic they can put an end to the insurgency problem by June 30th, at least in eastern Visayas, they are also continuously intensifying operations to make sure rebel fronts in the region do not pose a security threat during the May elections. The Armed Forces Chief urging candidates in Samar not to pay the so-called permit to campaign fees in areas with significant communist presence.
Huwag na kayong matakot, huwag na kayong mag-isip, magdalawang isip na magbigay pa. Because ito lang yung nagpapatagal, maliban ito'y labag sa batas. We will assure you that the NPAs now here in Samar are not capable of doing this extortion and intimidation.
This comes just days after officials also visited the city of Marawi to bring their advocacy to the Bangsamoro. Candidates and their supporters are made to commit to keep elections peaceful, honest, and orderly. They also pledge to refrain from negative campaigning and the use of disinformation, as well as following strict health protocols during their sorties. Despite having a history of political violence, including the 2021 killing of Calbayog City Mayor Ronaldo Aquino, the police are ruling out the possibility of placing Samar Province under strict election control. At least 9 police officers are facing charges in the Aquino case. Now, some candidates expressing concern over the spate of killings in Samar, which the police insist are not election-related.
Please, we need the checkpoints. Put it there for us, then we can solve the killings here.
We look at the data of 2016-2019. How many are election-related incident? 0. So, wala kaming basihan para sabihin na ito ay magiging posibleng red area.
The military says it has enough personnel to help secure the elections, eyeing the possible deployment of provisional forces in hotly contested areas. David Santos, CNN Philippines.
An energy policy group warns of possible power interruptions across Luzon during the crucial election period. The Institute for Climate and Sustainable Cities maintains its February projections of a very tight power supply for the second quarter. It says the Energy Department should ensure power plants will not exceed the total allowable days for outages. The ICSC also suggests tougher penalties for those that will not comply.
Are we still expecting power outages? And the answer is yes. What is available on the grid today is only enough to suffice for the April 2022 demand. And to reach the 8,100 required capacity by May 2022, we need to commission the newly constructed GN-powered Diginin Unit 2.
These are new plants po. New plants, and yet ang daming outages ng Unit 1. Yung Unit 2 is not yet operational. We put a question mark on that. That's why
the DOE says energy efficiency measures are in place and more power plants and renewables will be coming in. Coming up on Newsnight, American drug authorities greenlight a second booster shot for 50 and older and the immunocompromised. Plus, a look back at Catriona Gray's iconic moment on the Miss Universe stage, immortalized in this famous global museum. Stay tuned to CNN Philippines. Welcome back to Newsnight. In the United States, persons over 50 years old and the immunocompromised may now get a second booster shot for COVID-19. Both the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and the Food and Drug Administration approved the expansion of the emergency use authorization for a fourth dose. The second booster can be given 4 months after the first one for Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. Those who receive the Johnson & Johnson's vaccine may also get Pfizer or Moderna as their fourth shot. Back here at home, the country now at moderate risk for COVID-19. Under the guidelines set by the U.S., the CDC lowered the risk for travel to the Philippines to level 2 amid fewer cases. Only unvaccinated Americans will be prohibited from going to Manila. The country was under level 4 or very high risk just last month. Officials expect new cases to drop to 70 by April if compliance to health protocols and vaccinations continue. Now, in the region with the lowest vaccine coverage, health workers are going out of their way to administer COVID-19 cases. Carolyn Bonkin takes us to Maguindanao in the Bangsamoro region, where vaccines are offered even in public markets.
An ambulance is going around telling everyone COVID-19 vaccines are available in the public market of Datu Odin Sinsuat, Maguindanao. Health workers have been checking out stalls since mid-March, finding out who's still unvaccinated and who wants a booster shot. There's also a pop-up vaccination site in the middle of the market. The Maguindanao Integrated Provincial Health Office sees this as an effective strategy to get more people immunized, especially in remote areas.
Galing sa mga liblib, once a week,
pupunta at bababayan sila sa palengke para yun na nga bibili ng kanilang mga needs. Mag-take chance kami na yung mga yun is mababakunahan namin sila. Usually, hindi namin sila naabutan doon mismo sa bahay nila.
Only 25% of the eligible population in Datuodin Sinsuat have been fully vaccinated. Health workers have yet to reach 67,000 unvaccinated residents who either have no time or money to visit vaccination sites. While going around, they also talk to those who are hesitant to get the shots as they debunk false vaccine claims on social media.
Ang target, aside sa mga customers nila, is yung mga owner talaga ng mga establishment. Kung dito naman sa palengke, ang is hindi na nila naiiwan yung kanilang mga paninda. So within the vicinity, nababakunahan sila agad.
May grabbed the chance to get boosted.
Gipit ng schedule din. NGO worker din ako, so nagta-travel kami. So ngayon ko lang na-timingan sila, ma'am.
Mocs, still unvaccinated, approach vaccinators after shopping.
Kasi hindi na ako makapunta doon sa munisipyo. Mas maganda dito sa palengke, kaya nandito na sa palengke.
Aside from Datuodin Sinsuat, Sultan Kudarat and Parang also have the lowest vaccine coverage in Maguindanao. These are the most populated areas in the province. In Sultan Kudarat, health workers likewise do house-to-house vaccinations.
They visited houses in Barangay Crossing, Simuay. Amera Karim got her first dose.
Bawat labas po natin, kailangan talaga ng vaccine card, kaya yun po.
Isa sa na-encounter namin is, kaya kumbaga, yung iba ma'am is nasa malalayong area, parang hirap po silang pumunta sa aming mga health center. Inoculating all eligible residents in BARM is still a long way to go, but health workers here are delighted every time they convince one person to get the life-saving shot. Caroline Bongkin, CNN Philippines.
In other news, security agencies are scrambling to grant President Duterte's wish to end the insurgency in the twilight of his term. But are military action and negotiations with rebels enough to bring down the decades-long struggle? David Santos reports.
This footage released by the military
Salamat nga bumaba ka mo.
show New People's Army rebels, some still armed, coming down from the hills in Samar. Among them, Kamisi, a mother of 3 and whose partner is a rebel leader.
Nagsisisi talaga kasi yung mga anak ko, napabayaan ko sila.
We've decided not to show her face for her security. Kamisi joined the NPA at 15, convinced by the ideals of waging a guerrilla war against the government to fight social ills and injustice.
Yung mga pangako kasi nila na magkakamayroon ng sapat na lupa, na pwedeng matirahan at pagsakahan, pero ni kahit isa wala naman po sila talagang naitulong sa amin.
She now hopes to reunite with her kids and also join the military so she can put her experience as a former combatant to use. Security forces going all out to comply with President Duterte's order to end insurgency before he steps down, either by military action or negotiations for rebels to surrender.
Hindi po dekada ang inaabot kapag local peace talks. Actually, halos 2 o 3 linggo lang yung negotiation, dumiretso na kagad bumaba.
The military is convinced communism in the country is on the verge of total collapse, but they admit rebels still keep pockets of resistance like in Mindanao.
Ito na lang sa northeastern, nandiyan pa si Maria Malaya, but we are closing in. Ang problema natin sa insurgency ay hindi naman talaga military problem. It is a socio-political economic problem.
Even if the last rebel falls, there's no guarantee of the end of struggle. David Santos, CNN Philippines.
In world headlines, Ukraine refuses to let its guard down as Russia claims it is scaling down its forces near the capital Kyiv and the city of Chernihiv. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky points out Russian troops still have a sizable potential to carry on with their attacks. U.S. officials also believe Russia could be putting up a front to reposition in other areas. Ukraine has floated a possible in-person meeting between Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Straight ahead on Newsnight, the Gin Kings book a ticket to the PBA finals. And yes, you are seeing double. Madame Tussauds unveils a wax figure of Catriona Gray, remembering her Miss Universe moment. Keep it here on CNN Philippines.
The IdeaPad offers smart learning solutions.
Welcome back. The quest to bring science and technology closer to Filipinos continues. The second season of CN Sikat, a magazine reality show that helps citizens solve problems through scientific methods, arrives soon. Science and Technology Department officials and CNN Philippines President Benjamin Ramos renewed the partnership in a MOA signing earlier.
Ito yung programs na kailangang ina-highlight ng government. Hopefully, CNN Philippines can help reach yung mga tao.
Awareness talaga is really big kasi marami mga tao ang hindi nakakaalam na posibleng matulungan din ng DOST. Through information, we truly transform lives.
CN Sikat Season 2 will premiere on April 23rd to air every Saturday and Sunday, 8 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon here on CNN Philippines. PBA News now. Barangay Ginebra San Miguel is the first squad to secure a ticket to the finals, ready to defend their Governor's Cup title. The team beat the NLEX Road Warriors in Game 4 earlier, 112-93. This will be Ginebra's fourth finals appearance within the last 5 seasons. Another game is underway between the Magnolia Hotshots and the Meralco Bolts, with Meralco's 2-1 semifinals lead. A win for the Bolts tonight could land them a place in the finals. The Philippine Olympic Committee defers its move to suspend the Philippine Athletics Track and Field Association, or PATAFA, for 90 days, citing its pending mediation process with pole vaulter EJ Obiena. But the POC president says if PATAFA does not endorse Obiena by next month's General Assembly, then the suspension will be decided on the floor. POC initially voted to suspend PATAFA for failing to serve its purpose as a national association amid its rift with Obiena. In entertainment, you can strike a pose with Catriona Gray as she does her iconic lava walk with a visit to Madame Tussauds Singapore. The Miss Universe 2018 winner's wax figure has been unveiled today, up for display until September 20th. Here's a look at Catriona and her wax doppelganger wearing a replica Mac Tumang lava gown. The beauty queen is the only Filipino to have her own figure in the tourist attraction. And this one's for K-pop fans. J-Hope of BTS has recovered from COVID-19, finishing quarantine today. With this, their agency confirms the rapper will perform in the Grammys alongside other members on Monday, Philippine time. But not everyone in the group is sure to grace the award stage. The management is talking to Grammy organizers about Jungkook's participation after the vocalist tested positive for the virus yesterday. On Instagram, the youngest BTS member assured fans he is recovering well. And before we go, here's a sneak peek at some new arrivals in local cinemas today. An iconic video game character faces another rival, while a Marvel anti-hero makes his movie debut. Christine Jacob has the preview.
Method actor Jared Leto takes on another comic book role in the movie Morbius. Here he plays Dr. Michael Morbius, who becomes a more biting fellow, or a living vampire to be exact, after trying to cure himself from a rare blood disorder. But his transformation comes with a price as he struggles in dealing with his newfound monstrous urges. The film also features Doctor Who star Matt Smith and singer-actor Tyrese Gibson.
Why shouldn't they know what it feels like for a change? Just accept who you are. The bad guy.
I discovered the source of ultimate power.
We need to get it back or the world is doomed.
The world's favorite blue spinning speedster is back for the next level quest in Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Our anthropomorphic hero faces an acid test when his nemesis, Dr. Robotnik, returns with a new partner, Knuckles the Echidna, voiced by charmer Idris Elba. But Robotnik is not the only one with a partner in crime. Tagging along with Sonic is his new sidekick, Tails. Familiar names James Marsden and Jim Carrey are back for the sequel, along with Ben Schwartz as the voice of Sonic. It also introduces Colleen O'Shaughnessy as the voice of Tails.
You forgot one. Unstoppable.
Christine Jacob there with the big screen updates. And that is it for now. Join me again on news.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
This program is brought to you by
Have you ever felt like you wanted to scream and shout at someone over an argument or a disagreement? Have you thrown objects in the air or hit a wall in frustration? This emotion is called anger, and it is a perfectly normal feeling. It alerts us to the fact that we have been wrong and motivates us to respond to a perceived threat. But anger becomes a problem when we can't control it, and it controls us instead. Today, we talk about anger management. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and you're watching MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. Our guests today will help us better understand what anger is and how to control it. Let's welcome our guests. Joining us is Dr. Ann Christine Guevara, who is a neurologist, psychiatrist at Bernardo General Hospital and the Los Santos Medical Center. Also with us is Richtofen de Jesus. He's a psychologist from St. Luke's Medical Center, Global City, and the Los Santos Medical Center. Let's talk about what exactly is anger. It's an emotional state that varies in intensity, from mild irritation to intense fury and rage. And we often feel this when someone has perceptively wronged you. Dr. Tin, tell us more about what happens to the body when one feels angry.
So with input, a person would perceive things through our senses, visual, smell, to the skin or what we feel, what we perceive as threat, that enters the brain as an input. It actually stimulates the emotional brain, which is particularly amygdala, which then stimulates the other parts of the brain, including the limbic system, which is the emotional brain, and the other parts of the brain, like the thinking brain. And all of this, when put together, causes responses. Now, the output can be seen externally, as in physical changes, and internally, it would present as internal changes in the different organs. Example, so physical changes would mean flushing of skin, prominence of the head and neck veins, facial grimacing. So kaya makikita mo talagang galit yung tao, clenched teeth, and tense muscles.
What hormones naman, Dr. Tin, do we release when we're shouting or screaming because of anger?
Merong nag-activate, merong nagpapakalma. So the things, the hormones that activate, and these include the adrenaline, noradrenaline, the cortisol. And these are the hormones that are released when we are angry. So kaya nagkakaroon ng adrenaline rush, fight or flight response. And the cortisol, in turn naman, it increases the usage of the sugar in the body. Kaya nagkakaroon tayo ng energy when we are angry.
Anger doesn't exist in a vacuum, and when we're mad or angry, there are a host of other emotions that we experience in the process. Tofi, tell us naman more about this.
When you talk about anger, it's already a result of several processes that are occurring in the mind. So, for example, it will start always with frustration, meaning there's something that you are going for and that you are unfortunately unable to get it. So therefore, you start to get frustrated from it. Now, as you get frustrated, you now try to reflect back to yourself and try to identify, do you have any resources that will then help you cope up with that kind of frustration? For example, you're going to review your capacity, and then unfortunately, your capacity does not meet the requirements in order for you to cope up with the frustration, then it will also be added to the sense of helplessness. So frustration followed by the concept of helplessness will then allow you to feel the emotion of anger. So from there, as long as the frustration increases, the helplessness increases, your anger becomes bigger and bigger. And because of that, you are now going to react very angry towards the situation.
How does anger differ from aggression?
Anger is a mood, so it's internal. Aggression is when we then externalize the anger that we are feeling. So for example, if you feel that you are so mad, then that's just anger. But if you are already starting to get an object, throw it aside, or for example, unfortunately hurting other people or even yourself, that is how it becomes aggression.
Now, there are different types of anger we should all be familiar with. Tofi, what are some examples of these, different types of anger?
There is such a thing as a righteous anger, meaning there was really a situation that really frustrated you out of the blue, meaning you were unable to really see it coming. And then from there, you then give the reaction of anger itself. Now, this is the time wherein you really felt that you have been hurt, that you have been wronged, and that's why you're reacting that way. On the other hand, there is what we call disproportionate anger, meaning the stimulus itself that triggered it is very small and disproportional towards the reaction that you are giving. So it means that you're making a mountain out of a molehill. You're making a big deal out of a small situation. So that is when it becomes quite uncontrollable.
Now, Dr. Tin, what are some of the most common types of anger na nararanasan ng mga tao?
Some of the most common types of anger are behavioral anger. This is a reaction when one physically reacts towards a feeling of anger that leads to violence and aggression. The other one is retaliatory anger or vengeful anger. Ito yung you want to get back as a response to that. For instance, when you had a conversation and you want to get back to that person, so it's a retaliation, kaya tinatawag na retaliatory anger. And there's this volatile anger, which seems to come out of nowhere, easily triggered, pero very volatile, kaya it comes down, a person comes down quickly as well.
Assertive anger can be a healthy option for expressing anger. This type of anger allows a person to express what they're feeling in a calm, verbal manner. Tofi, please explain to us why this is the best type of anger that a person should practice.
It means that you're just forcefully getting your point to the other person that you're communicating with. It is effective, number one, because you're defending yourself. It allows you to really value yourself as a person. It allows you to tell the other person, hey, we have some boundaries here. I have my own values. I have my own capacity and you need to respect that. By being assertive, you're now telling the other person, I have a point as well. I have something to say as well. And from that, you can then raise whatever situation or whatever feeling you have within yourself. It's becoming expressive.
There are also more dangerous and physical types of anger, such as behavioral, retaliatory, and volatile. Dr. Tin, could you explain what happens to the brain when we feel these three?
Persons with these kinds of anger, it's really impaired, it's decreased. So the person cannot think clearly, it's very emotional, the judgment is also impaired, kaya things get out of hand, no? They cannot think clearly, and they do things and say things that they do not mean. And then all of a sudden, when mood shifts, no, they suddenly calm down. That's where the thinking part comes in. Mali pala yung ginawa ko. I was not able to manage my anger at that point. So that's how it goes, no? It's an impairment in the regulation of the connections in the brain, the thinking brain and the emotional brain.
Now, anger is normal, but it can be detrimental to both your physical and emotional health when you lose control of it. More on this when we return. We're your connection to healthcare. You're watching MedTalk Health Talk. There are many causes of anger, ranging from external to internal influences. But whatever the cause, managing your anger is more important. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and you're watching MedTalk Health Talk. We're together in health. Any person or event can make you angry. Now, there are many reasons why one might get angry. Let's go into the causes of the more common types of anger, which are chronic, self-abusive, and verbal. Now, these types can affect a person at home or in the workplace. Tofi, can you tell us more about the possible causes of anger?
There are some people who could not really tolerate things that are not going their way. So that's the first one. You get angry because whenever things are not going as smoothly as you're expecting them to be, you get angry. Another cause of anger is that it became reinforcing for you across time. It meant that when you were getting angry, you got what you want. It means that whenever, for example, something frustrating comes to your way, you then start to get angry, and then the situation changes into your favor. Another cause of anger, of course, is genetics. If your parents are people who are quite angry, of course, then you will also have that situation wherein you can then see them and be modeled by them in the way that you are behaving as well. Another one is that you have low tolerances of your own incapabilities. So they usually blame themselves for things that are not supposed to be blamed about, and their attribution is a little bit off. And because of that, their reaction is usually an angry emotion.
Sometimes we use anger to replace other emotions we'd rather not deal with, such as emotional pain, fear, loneliness, or even loss. Tofi, can you explain to us why this happens naman?
Actually, as a defense mechanism, we have what we call reaction formation. Reaction formation means that you're going to substitute a feeling, usually the opposite of what you are feeling right now, in order for you to defend your mind in terms of becoming stable. So for example, let's say there is a loss that you have felt because of a loss of a loved one. The loss is then being converted into anger because handling the anger is a more viable option, so to speak, as compared to handling the loss. So what happens now is that the person, instead of feeling sad, instead of feeling in touch with that real emotion, will then choose to get angry instead.
Is anger a normal process in trying to grieve for a loss?
Actually, it's form of the Adhd: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. We really get angry in that part because having a loss is a frustrating situation. It is something that we do not want, and yet we have to accept it. You will really have that level of anger. However, it is something that you have to go through. By being angry, it means that you're just releasing frustrations that have not been processed with you. The point there is that not to remain angry.
Anger can also be a symptom or response to a medical condition. It can be a symptom of depression, ADHD, substance abuse, or even bipolar disorder. Dr. Tin, let's talk about this. Why do these disorders trigger anger?
In depression, anger is actually internalized and externalized. So when we say internalized anger, the person would feel low mood, hopelessness, would have crying spells and suicidal thoughts. No? They're easily triggered by the circumstances in their lives. And sometimes it can also be biological, as in chronic kind of stress. So chronic kind of stress causes dysthymia or low mood for a long time. And this lowers their threshold in coping with certain life situations. So they internalize that anger and turn towards themselves. Now in ADHD, we know that the key points in ADHD is inattention and impulsiveness. So there is a misunderstanding most of the time because of the lack of attention to details. The person cannot understand fully or cannot fully focus on that situation. There will be shifting of moods and thinking and focus. And because of that, no, it causes some conflicts. Another example would be adults with ADHD who usually present with lack of direction. And all of these causes frustration, disappointment on the part of the patient. And again, the anger then turns towards the self.
Can a person who is really angry be at risk of, say, a heart attack or stroke?
When one is angry, again, we stimulate the sympathetic system, the adrenaline rush, that it would cause increase in blood pressure, increase in heart rate. Vasomotor responses would be more of differences in the caliber of our blood vessels, so whether it will constrict or dilate. And there's also the release of inflammatory markers, which causes clotting. So if we will discuss this in the context of, for instance, heart attack, so kapag tumaas ang blood pressure, it would cause stress on the heart. It can also cause arrhythmias or a dysregulation of the heart rate. Mag-iiba yung heart rate.
Some people are actually more prone to anger than others. Dr. Tin, what are the parts in the brain that are different in a person who is quick to anger versus a person who is not?
Both nature and nurture factor in on how people respond to certain situations and causes angry outbursts. And the nature part is the environment, how the patient or the person has been reared. And the biological aspect is the genetic part. Now, the wirings in the brain is very important. That's why other people, like the type A personalities, are more prone to angry outbursts. The parasympathetic system, which releases the acetylcholine, is known to be quite higher in the people who don't get angry easily as compared to those who are quick to anger. Also, the connectivity in the brain. So, neuroimaging studies would say that there's better connectivity in those who are calm and collected in the face of stressful situations, because the thinking brain can manage the emotional brain during those times.
Now, you can't get rid or avoid the things that anger you, but you can learn to control your reaction to them. When we return, we'll give you tips on how to best manage your temper. Your health is our mission. This is MedTalk Health Talk. The goal of anger management is to reduce both your emotional feelings and the physiological arousal that anger causes. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and you're watching MedTalk Health Talk, where your care comes first. Anger doesn't look the same for everyone, as all express it differently. Dr. Tin, can you give some tips on how we can keep anger at bay?
Try to have breathing exercises. If you know that you're going into a stressful situation, like in the office work, try to do some meditation. Or when you're already in that stressful situation, try to pause for a while. And if you can, walk around first, let the emotions subside before you face the situation again, to avoid any untoward incidences. And then, of course, on the background, because we are preventive, we try to reinforce our thought processes so that when we face certain stressful situations, we're already ready to face them. So that would be trying to pause, trying to find out our triggers, and develop our better judgment.
Tofi, what are some steps that our viewers can try at home to help manage their anger?
In deep breathing, what you're trying to do there is to slow down the heart rate that you're having in order to tell your brain that your body is already calming down. Another factor there is for you to mimic a behavior that you are seeing. We are also asking our patients, for example, to count from 20 going down to 1. What we're doing there is we're slowing down the possible impulsivity that they are trying to manifest. So, for example, let's say something frustrating happened at home. You tell yourself, okay, I'll count myself from 20 to 1 first. And then by doing so, you are now preventing your brain to become very impulsive and very intense. For those people who have inward anger, particularly those, for example, who really hate a lot of who they are, we usually let them have a certain reflection. There are certain reflection exercises, gratitude exercises, and self-calming exercises. The main goal of those activities is to allow you to have a peaceful reconciliation with your limitations. It allows you to understand that even though you are limited and flawed, it doesn't necessarily define you as a person. And by doing so, by being reconciled with who you are, you will then have a better outlook of yourself and of other people as well.
Dr. Tin, what are some signs that one should already seek help from a professional with regards to their anger?
When your emotions or your angry outbursts already disrupts your daily routine, affecting your relationships and your work, maybe you should consider that. Second would be when people are starting to notice, and they give constructive criticisms. Listen to these people. Maybe you really need some help there. Then physical symptoms are being evident. You develop hypertension, for instance. Maybe you really need to address the underlying condition, which is having this emotional outbursts. And finally, if you started to physically harm or verbally harm yourself and others, maybe that's the time you should seek professional help. But for me, prevention is always the key. So when you feel that something is not quite right with how you feel, maybe it's best to consult to clarify things, to avoid diagnosing yourself, and the intervention is given early.
Okay, and with that, Dr. Tin, do you have any final message for our viewers?
When emotions really get high, the pandemic, the different limitations that we have on the daily basis, it's best to really sort our feelings, consult another person, express ourselves, and focus on the good things so that we could avoid getting angry.
And Tofi, before we go, do you have any message for our viewers?
Getting angry is just a momentary reaction. However, its consequences may be long-term. We need to understand that we should not sacrifice that moment for a very long-term effect that we will be suffering for a long time. We need to understand that regulation is the key. Anger is always there, but it can be controlled.
Thank you very much, neurologist, psychiatrist, Dr. Ann-Christine Guevara, and psychologist, Rick Tofen de Jesus. Maraming salamat sa inyo. We want to be your partner for a lifetime of good health. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines.